This happened about 3 years ago during summertime. I was riding my motorbike in the mountains of Giflu all morning long. It had been very bright and sunny out, then suddenly the pitter-patter of rain started up out of nowhere. I came across a rest stop area and pulled in to take a short break. In the service area, there was a toilet and some shops and a building with a wooden roof. There was also a table and a little bench in what looked to be a little hut. As I was using the toilet, the rain really began to pour down and thunder started to echo through the mountains, and the rain didn't seem as if it would stop anytime soon, so I thought I'd better change into my emergency raincoat. I took off my backpack and headed towards the sheltered hut. While I was getting my raincoat out of my backpack, I put my other things down on the table. I casually glanced up, only to see an elderly couple sat right opposite to me on the bench. They hadn't been there just a second ago. When did they show up? I didn't really care about that too much, though. I was more worried about when this damn thunderstorm was going to stop already. I stared at the sky for 2 to 3 minutes, trying to figure out what this crazy weather was going to do next. The elderly couple that had showed up out of nowhere didn't say a single word. Things started to feel a little bit uncomfortable. A little awkward, if you will. So I tried to break the silence. This rain started up real suddenly. The old man talked to me in a dead flat voice. It's always raining. It only just started to rain though. What the hell was he talking about? They both looked at the sky and not at me. But didn't get a good look at their faces. Man, if I don't take a quick rest, I'll never make it home. I said. The old man paused for a couple of seconds and said, I really feel for the ones who won't make it. What a weird thing to say. I could suddenly hear some voices shouting in the distance. When I looked around, the old couple had disappeared. That's all I can really remember. Next thing I know, I was jolted awake. I opened my eyes to find out was being shaken by some random guy. He looked about 30 years old or something. Hey, are you all right? He looked very concerned while he was shaking my shoulder. I asked him what was going on and what had happened. He said he'd seen me when he pulled into the rest area's toilet. Apparently, I was climbing over the safety railings onto the mountain path close to the wharf. I was stood dangerously close to a cliff's edge. He said I looked completely dazed and disoriented. So we had to jump over and stop me from jumping off or whatever the hell it was I was going to do. I really have no recollection of that though. I must have been unconscious for all of 2 minutes at the most. I still very clearly remembered the rain. But as I mentioned it, the guy who saved me from jumping off the cliff edge said that it hadn't rained at all that day. Well, yeah, it must have been raining because look, I pointed to my raincoat only to discover that I didn't have it on. I looked around me and there were no puddles, no wet ground, or any sort of sign that had been raining either. Last year, 3 friends and I went motorbiking. Along the mountain paths of Udatakayama, we took a break in the rest area. It looked kind of cool actually, like an old cabin. It was pretty great because there was no one else around really. One of my friends, let's call him, was laying down and stretching out on the bench. Another friend, who we'll call B, was taking in the scenery. It was extremely beautiful in this area. I guess we had stayed there relaxing for about 30 minutes or so, when black clouds began to gather overhead. It looked as if a downpour was on the cards. I quickly headed toward the sheltered area by the bench that he was lying down at. He was fast asleep. So I shook him awake. He wouldn't wake up though. He was out like a light. As the thunderstorm stirred and raged, we noticed an elderly couple who'd suddenly appeared to take shelter. Hey there. It's a real weatherly nightmare, isn't it? The old man replied. Yeah, it truly is. As being I talked, the old couple sat there in silence and just stared at who was still sleeping. I found this couple very creepy. I didn't like the way they were staring at my friend. I didn't want to stick around them for much longer. The thunder was cracking all around us, though. and it made me and B jump up in surprise. Apparently he was loud enough to wake me up as well. He shot up straight away and said, "Did you see their faces?" I had no idea what he was talking about. I looked around and noticed that the old couple were now gone. B seemed confused. He ran out of the HUD only to come back in and say that were only our bikes in the parking area. Where the hell did that old couple go? We were out in the middle of the mountains. It was impossible to get around by foot out here. Man, I can't feel that horrible feeling anymore. We asked what he was talking about. While I was sleeping, I felt something terrible, kind of like a nightmare. I opened my eyes, and that elderly couple was approaching me. When they sat down, I pretended to be asleep. "Oh, so you were awake the whole time? You heard us talking then?" "Yeah, for some reason, I really didn't want those guys to come near me." My friend was shaking out. He was really stressed out, and their disappearance seemed to have rambled them. He always liked to pretend to be asleep when something was about to go down. We really have no idea what was going on with that couple, or why they gave off such a strange, anomalous feeling. I used to work for a small trucking company that would deliver frozen product to stores across several states. For the most part, I would do 3 or 4 deliveries before heading back to the warehouse and then heading home. Every once in a while, though, we would have a long delivery round where we would end up too far to head back that same day. We would have to sleep somewhere overnight before heading back. Usually just pull over the truck into a truck stop and rest for a few hours, then get back on the road. Anyway, I was scheduled for a long delivery on this day, and I knew I wouldn't get back until pretty damn late the next day. I got ready and headed out. Nothing really happened the entire way there. I drove the route, unloaded the truck, and started to head back. It was pretty late though, around 1 in the morning or so. I figured I should stop and rest for an hour or two before continuing on the way back. The last sign and scene for a truck stop said 40 miles ahead though, so I still had quite a bit of a ways to go before getting there. I tend to space out for long periods of time when driving down long straight roads. Especially this late at night when nobody else is out driving. All of a sudden though, I thought I saw something flickering in my side mirror, looked over, and noticed headlights shining from right behind the trailer. I couldn't see the car that these were coming from and old though. Usually that meant the car was in my blind spot too close to the back for me to see. I continued down the road at the same speed, waiting for this car to get into the other lane and pass me by. To my surprise though, whoever this was staying right behind me at the exact same distance. And this was starting to really bother me. I knew if I had to brake for any reason, this guy was for sure going to hit me. The truck stop was just a few miles ahead though, so I tried to ignore them for the rest of the way there. Finally, I saw the sign for the rest area and started to pull in. And as I was turning, I checked my mirrors again and saw the car start to slow down. They continued to follow me even into the parking lot. I honestly wasn't sure what to make of this at this point. I figured maybe I'd accidentally cut him off a while back or something. And he wanted to scream at me about it. I had gotten a lot of angry drivers in my years of trucking, so I was pretty used to being yelled at. I'd never had someone follow me in like this though. I pulled into an open spot and shifted into park. The car slowly trailed in behind me and got closer and closer to the back before eventually stopping once again. They had parked too close for me to actually see them in the mirrors. At this point, I was getting a bit weirded out. I got out and started walking around to the back to question them. Almost as soon as I slammed my driver door shut, though, they slammed it in reverse and drove away in such a rush that I couldn't even see their license plate. I could tell that whoever was driving was an older man though. The car was white and had patches of rust all over and looked somewhat similar to one of those old police cars with the front bumper bars. I stood out there by the back of the truck for a couple of minutes, making sure everything was still securely locked in, that the person wouldn't be coming back, and then got back in the truck and turned it off, and double-checked all the doors to make sure they were locked, and did one quick glance out all the windows to make sure there were no more cars around. Then I laid back and closed my eyes. All of a sudden, I heard a bang echo through my trailer. I checked my watch and saw that almost 2 hours had passed by, and now it was a little past 3 a.m. That was another loud bang. This time even louder. I looked over in the side mirror and saw a faint shadow moving around towards the back. This time I got really freaked out. I grabbed the small knife I kept in the middle compartment and started making my way back there. This time though I left the driver's door open so as to not make any noise. As I got closer, I crouched down a little and looked underneath the trailer. I could clearly see someone standing right up against the back of the truck. Their car was right behind them with its headlights turned off. Once I saw that, a rush of fear ran through my body. I decided not to approach any further and instead shouted out to them. My voice was admittedly a little bit shaky, but it seemed to do the trick. They rushed into their car and sped off. Looking at the back door, there were scratches all over the lock and clear marks as if they were trying to cut it open. I looked around to see if any other trucks could have seen the incident. But the lawn was pretty empty. After a couple of minutes, I ended up just getting back on the road and headed straight home. Nothing else happened for the rest of the trip. I always assumed this was just a guy trying to steal from my trailer. But obviously he didn't know I was on my way back from a delivery and the whole trailer was empty. Anyways, it was still pretty damn unnerving. This happened to me during my early years of trucking, and I still get paranoid, sometimes with a feeling a car may be following right behind me without me being able to see them. Going to see my family during the summer is quite fun. Traveling 3 days by car after getting there, and we would have about 3 good weeks ahead of us to spend in Nebraska. I myself am from Pennsylvania. I was really excited when my aunt asked us to stay with her. I mean, she was a pretty good aunt. We were already 4 days into the vacation, and I wanted to stay up late one night. I opened up my laptop and decided to Skype my friend Brody. We talked for about 2 hours until my aunt's dog suddenly started barking upstairs. I'm ashamed to admit I grabbed the dog and told them to shut up. Brody and I continued our conversation, but the dog would not stop barking. This time, I chalked it up to probably being my sister who would just come in through the door. And I felt a bit relieved that she was here now. But she went like to bed and was now about 2:45 in the morning. Brody and I had already finished our conversation. As I lay there trying to get some sleep myself, the dog began barking once more. At this point, I was getting quite annoyed. I wanted to go to sleep and I was exhausted. Right as I was about to get angry though, I heard a tapping on the window behind me. I was in the living room. And there was this glass window, a large one that made up a majority of the wall and was already a bit creeped out thanks to the dog's barking, not to mention that was not that familiar with my aunt's place. When I heard this tapping, I was expecting the worst. It was common for drunks to wander around this area. And the place was almost infamous for it. So when I turned around to look at what was out there, I was expecting some rain. Dumb drunk to be tapping at the window. Yeah, my aunt lived a little too close to the bar for sure. Sure enough, as I turned around, I could see at the window there was a bald man staring in at me. I jumped out of my skin when I saw him. He looked sweaty and dirty. He was swaying back and forth. B&D looked to be very drunk. He then tapped again, even though I was already looking at him. He began speaking to me, muffled by the glass, and he there, "Don't be rude to your dog. I heard everything you said to that poor thing. Just because it's barking doesn't mean that your worst nightmare. That would be me." He then started this freakish laugh, as if he thought that was the funniest thing in the world. He then bolted away as fast as he could around the side of the house looking like he was about to trip the whole time. It was a bit too dark to actually see his face or where he'd actually gone. I wasn't entirely sure if I should call the cops or wake someone up. Sure. You might say it was some drunk playing a prank. But this guy really seemed to want to scare me and makes me wonder what he might have done. If there was no wall or glass separating us. Alcohol does tear away your judgment and your inhibitions. That incident made me realize that no matter where you are in the world, nothing is really perfectly safe. Not unless you're in a place with people you absolutely know and trust, though. Last thing you want is to experience that sort of thing. So be safe out there, everyone. Be sure to shut your blinds and be nice to your dog as well. The summer I turned 27, my boyfriend of 3 years invited me to stay over at his parents' place for a week. They were heading off on some month-long vacation around Europe. So they asked him to watch their house while they were going to be gone. A big reason was they needed someone to take care of Buster, their 7-year-old beagle. Instead of staying there all alone, my boyfriend asked me to come keep him company. It was super fun having all that privacy, and it was kind of emotional to seeing how things might play out if we stayed together and achieved our career goals. There was also summer, and with both of us being teachers, neither of us had any real commitments or anything like that. Emoji's parents were in Europe. We had our own little staycation right there in that house. I arrived on Friday evening and stayed on the way until late Thursday night, only occasionally heading home to grab a change of clothes or something out of my fridge. That Thursday, we stayed in bed until late in the morning, then headed out to get brunch at our favorite spot. I ordered my usual and he ordered his. It was a nice little brunch date like that always put me in a great mood. I was walking out of the cafe shop and back towards his car. I was in a really good mood at that point. I distinctly remember though, the moment I lost some of that good feeling having spotted a guy across the street sitting in his car and very clearly staring at me. I did a double take just to make sure I wasn't imagining things. But no, there he was just staring back at me with this vacant expression on his face. I didn't want to say anything to Jason, my boyfriend, just in case things escalated and ruined our day for no reason. Once we were safely back in his car, I told him about the guy who was staring us down. He reacted exactly how I expected him to, kind of mad at first, but then trying to make light of it by telling me how pretty I looked. I didn't mention it to him. But that wasn't the kind of look the guy was giving me, like he was trying to stare at me because he found me hot or something. It was just this expressionless 1,000-yard stare. Like he didn't give a crap if I knew he was staring or not. That was definitely the creepiest part. We got back to his parents' place, hung out some more, and playfully argued about where to order takeout from. We had a generally nice afternoon together and dinner was quite good as well. I won with my suggestion of Korean food. Once again, a nice time was had by all. With us being teachers, we were conditioned to have an earlier bedtime. So after a few glasses of wine and a little bit of Big Bang Theory, we took a shower together and then went to sleep. And as I mentioned earlier, we were taking care of Buster, the old beagle that I had come to absolutely adore by that period of my stay. He was just so chill and friendly to everyone. I swear I had never seen a dog so hungry for cheese of all things. Buster had apparently gotten pretty smart in his older years till whenever he needed the bathroom, he'd just walk up to the back patio doors of the house, sit his butt down and just stare at you and whine. If you didn't immediately get up to let them out into the yard. It was cute and very polite of him. I remember that night waking up and needing to pee really bad. When I was in the bathroom though, I could hear Buster whining. There was no scratching, but he was still whining at the door. After I finished with my business, I figured I'd go lead Buster out to have his right. As I got to the top of the stairs though, my sister and I went to a Jack in the Box during the summer of 2016. We grabbed our stuff and sat at the table closest to the window. Honestly, I really hated being alone in that place. It didn't make me feel that much better being with my sister either. Something about that area was just a weird, man. I suddenly remembered that I should buy my mom some food to bring back home to her as well. I got up to the counter and ordered her some food, then rejoined my sister. As I came back though, I noticed my sister now looked quite frightened and weirded out. She said that this weird-looking homeless guide kept on staring at her when we both turned around in our booth and tried to eat our food, ignoring this weird guy. What happened next completely terrified me though. All of a sudden, another guy began running out of the store with this little girl. I thought she must have still been in school. She looked like she was 5 or 6 years old. Maybe they were running out like that because it was early in the morning and they were late for school or something. We were eating there and pretty early. I was terribly wrong though. It took me a moment to remember that day was actually a school holiday. No one would be running to get to school. Plus the look on their faces looked like they were both quite creeped out. I can feel knots in my stomach. Suddenly, my sister grabbed me by the arm and practically dragged me out of there. I tucked my arm away, quite confused and surprised. I asked her what was wrong. She kept staring behind me back into the restaurant. Well, if that father and daughter were running away, they had to be running away from something we need to leave to. I turned around to look back only to see that coming out of the doors of the Jack in the Box was that same homeless man. He was looking at my sister still and had what looked to be a knife in his hand. He was smiling, revealing a lot of missing teeth. He began stumbling towards us slowly but surely moving. We ran away from him all the while we could hear him calling her name, my sister's name, perfectly. Neither of us to this day have any idea how that man even knew it. It really makes me wonder how long that man must have been watching my sister. After that, we never went back to that Jack in the Box ever again. If you ever go out like that, even when you're with somebody, always be aware of your surroundings, because there's no telling what might happen around you at any moment. What that man could have done, had we not noticed him in time, could have been quite a lot worse. Hey guys, thank you all for the support. I hope you're enjoying the content. So why don't you do me a favor and give this video a like and a comment? If you're new to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It would really help my channel out. And of course, stay up to date by hitting that notification button. Thanks very much, guys.